How can we find equivalent fractions? We've done lots of work with the ratio table so far this school year. How can we use this to help us find equivalent fractions? You guys have your percent to fraction chart on which you have the fraction 2/3. Think for a minute about what percent 2/3 is equivalent to. Check your chart. What do you see? You should see that 2/3 is equal to 66 and 2/3%. What other fraction do you see on your chart that is equal to 2/3 and also equal to 66 and 2/3%? If you're looking at your chart, you should see one more that is equal to 66 and 2/3%, and that would be 4/6. We know that our ratio chart is just like a multiple tower, just flipped on its side, where we're skipping through and looking for a pattern. 2/3 doubles. If I multiply my numerator and my denominator by 2, gives me 4/6. I can continue in this way to find other equivalents. For example, if I multiply 2 times 3 and 3 times 3, I would have 6/9, which is also an equivalent fraction. Continuing on in this pattern, 2 times 4, always going back to the beginning, and 3 times 4 will give me 8/12. All of these fractions are also equivalent to 66 and 2/3%. You can follow this strategy for any fraction to find one that is equivalent with a different numerator and denominator. Let's say that you're working on a word problem and you come up with a fraction like this, 30/40 or 30/40ths. Could you work backwards and reduce this fraction to find another fraction that means the same thing? Yes. We need to think about what factors these two numbers have in common. How can I create 30 and 40 using multiplication? Well, I know that some factor pairs of 30 include 5 times 6, so 5 and 6, 1 and 30, my writing is messy, 2 and 15, and 3 and 10. I can repeat this with 40 and think about the factors of 40. How can I make 40 with multiplication? And I can do 5 times 8, 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 10 times 4. What factor do these have in common? If I can find the largest, greatest common factor, I can do this in one step. You can also use any other common factors to help you to work backwards in this ratio table. I can see just from looking that both of these fractions, both of these numbers have in common the number 10. So this time, instead of multiplying by the same number, I'm going to divide by the same number. I can divide 30 by 10 and 40 by 10. 10 times 3 would give me 30. 10 times 4 would give me 40. So 30/40ths is the same thing as 3/4. Another trick that people sometimes use involves canceling out zeros. We're thinking about place value. So if I'm dividing by 10, I'm basically changing my place value by one place value. So by canceling out these matching zeros, I can also see that this equals 3/4. And I can look at my chart and see that this is 75%. There are many ways to find equivalent fractions. It's important that you remember that a ratio table is a really easy way to organize your numbers to make sure that you keep your fractions balanced, and that you also have your fraction percent chart to practice with and use as a reference when you're trying to find fractions for percents and percents for fractions.